Hi everyone, I'm your IELTS tutor Jack, and today we have a topic that I really enjoy talking about with my students. It's cultural differences. Okay, welcome back, and I hope you enjoyed last week's episode. That was a bit of a special one. I tried to take you through my process of answering IELTS questions. I hope that gave you a little bit of insight. It's not easy, especially those part threes. I get a lot of questions in my comments saying, how can I do what you do? How can I answer part three questions concisely and logically? So I hope, as I said, last week's episode cleared that up for you. Now today we're talking about cultural differences, and when I look at my textbook, there's a lot of difficult vocabulary. Definitely. I think if you want to be specific about culture, you do need some quite high-level vocabulary. It gets very specific. So to give you some examples, there's etiquette, diversity, subculture, taboo. I love the word taboo. When we use taboo, it means that something, a subject, is something you shouldn't talk about. It's a subject that's avoided, maybe for religious reasons or for societal reasons. So definitely, I think every culture has their taboo subject. There certainly are taboo topics, taboo subjects here in South Korea. It is a noun or an adjective, and I think I'm really going to try to use that in today's answers. Now, of course, this is the IELTS Plus Total Speaking Textbook, and you can find that at Britplus.net. That's where you can find all of this language and, of course, the structures and strategies that I use in each episode. So go and check that out. And without further ado, I think we'll get... Oh, no. Hold on. I must give you a student challenge. Let's not forget. Today's student challenge. I want you to answer the following question. Have you ever experienced culture shock? Have you experienced culture shock? So culture shock, of course, is when you're in another culture and you find some aspect overwhelming, uncomfortable, and it requires you to adapt. So let me know in the comments below. I'm really excited to hear this one. Maybe you've experienced England, I don't know. But tell me, when you traveled, what is an example of culture shock? And give me some detail. What did you experience? How did you feel? How did you overcome it? That's your student challenge today. I'm glad I remembered. And let's start with some part ones. Have you ever visited a country with a culture different from your own? Okay, I've visited several countries with cultures different from my own. A number come to my mind, but a good example would probably be Thailand. When I went to Thailand for the first time, it was so exotic. There was so many things to see and experiences to have. But also I noticed, wow, it's so different from the UK that I definitely experienced some culture shock while I was there. Next question. How do you feel about experiencing new cultures? I really, really enjoy experiencing new cultures. So one of my favorite things to do is to travel. I've been to several countries, and especially in Southeast Asia, which is near where I'm located. I'm in East Asia. So I'm really fascinated to see different cultures, the way that their etiquette is different to my own. Seeing maybe the subcultures, you see that in Japan where they have all these subcultures with amazing clothing and hair. So yes, I'm a huge fan of experiencing other cultures. Good. Okay, you might hear I'm starting to get some of that language into my answers. It's going to be hard today. And we're going to go straight on to a part two. As normal, I'm not going to warm up. And my question today is, describe a time when you experienced culture shock. Okay, so this is similar to the student question. And well, of course, you will know, I think you will know, I'm British. I'm from England, but I currently reside in Korea. I've been here 15 years, so it's a long, long time. I am like a local now. But definitely huge culture shock when I came here. So, by the way, this is not my answer. We're going to put 2 minutes on the clock, and my time starts now. I'd like to tell you about South Korea. I came to South Korea in 2010, January 2010, so it's been 15 years. It was an immediate culture shock when I came off the plane and noticed how, as I'm moving through the airport, people are so much busier and there's a lot of hustle and bustle. People are maybe touching each other. I mean, they're kind of shoulder barging each other. It was certainly different etiquette standards, which surprised me. So immediately I felt, wow, I'm in a totally different place. And as I spent more time in South Korea, so many things really stood out to me. But just briefly, on the positive side, the hospitality was amazing. The way that South Koreans take care of guests, especially if you are part of the family or friendship group, is beyond anything I've ever experienced. So let me tell you a little more about South Korea. South Korea is in the east of Asia. It's very influenced by Confucianism originally. It's changing now, but that means that it's a very collectivist culture. And as I said, they really take care of each other. They like to do things in groups. So this definitely was a source of my culture shock when I came here, that, wow, people love to be in groups and there's less individuality. For me personally, it was really tough. It was very hard to overcome the culture shock. I remember it took at least 3 months to feel comfortable here, but such a growing and learning experience for me. I quickly made friends and traveled different parts of Korea. And okay, that was nice. To be honest, I don't know how I'm doing with the language. There's certainly plenty I see here that I'm not using, and particularly, I'm not using taboo. So let's listen out for taboo in my part 3 questions. Do notice there, I want to make one note. Do notice how the past section was so past focused. That was the past section around the first minute. And then I said, let me tell you a little more about South Korea. And then that was very present focus and South Korea description focus. So getting that big difference between topics and tense gives you more diversity in your answer, more variety. So that's a really key point that I tell my students here in my academy. Excellent, let's do some part 3s. What are some common cultural differences that people might encounter when traveling abroad? Okay, there are a number of cultural differences that you're always going to face when you travel in another country. But I think a really good example is the way people speak and the topics they talk about. So, I've noticed that British people and American people tend to say a lot. We say a lot. You look at small talk and we talk and talk and talk. And that really shocks my students in South Korea, because in South Korea, it's certainly not customary to say a lot in conversation. And small talk is quite short and it's difficult for English learners in South Korea. I also noticed that the taboo subjects are different, and in East Asia, there are many more taboo subjects. So definitely when you travel other countries, you have to be careful what you talk about. Good, okay, I did it. Taboo subject, taboo. That was a good way of getting it in. The next question is, how can learning about cultural differences improve international relations? I think it's very important to learn about cultural differences in order to understand other people. I think it's very easy to get offended by people and assume that they're rude, but it has nothing to do with rudeness. It is entirely a cultural difference. This is something I have worked on myself so that I'm able to empathize with different people around the world. I think with this, it will allow us to adapt quicker to multicultural or multinational communities, which we are seeing more and more. For example, in Seoul, it's really becoming more of a multinational city with different ethnic groups and cultures. Okay, I'm feeling good today. I think I'm doing okay with the language. I hope you're enjoying these answers. And of course, when you're listening to me, you should be thinking about your own answers and how you would adapt my answer to different questions or your experience. Okay, the last question for today is, in what ways do cultural differences impact communication? I think the obvious answer is that it makes communication more difficult. Now, there's a number of reasons for this. As I've talked about before, it could be because of the different ways of approaching small talk and the types of topics that you can and can't cover. Also, an important aspect is the non-verbal, so the physical communication, the way that you use your hands and arms, body. It's very important because it can make you seem more aggressive, and that can have a negative impact on communication. So the etiquette around communication is so important to understand, and something we need to learn more in order to not offend others. Okay, that's everything for today. I really hope you enjoyed that. I revealed some of my experiences and I enjoyed talking about it. Of course, you have your student question for today, which is, have you ever experienced culture shock? Which really is a kind of a part 2 question. But just tell me, which country did you go to and what was your experience? Give me some details. Have a lovely week this week. Study exceptionally hard. And I look forward to seeing you next week because we are going to talk about daily routine, a seemingly easy one, but we have to make some adaptations to our strategy. You will see that next week. Goodbye.